So welcome to our tutorial class, and I'm I prepared this video essentially to help you prepare uh, for your quiz. As you try to answer your quiz, hopefully this video recording helps. So this is intended for level 6 to level 10, and what I propose that you do is you print out the PDF that I sent you, and then before listening to this video, and then try answering it simultaneously. And then uh, as you try to answer the quiz, also um, you can also pause the video if you're trying to understand some concepts or trying to find the answers, and that's fine too. Okay. Um, so let me just share my screen. Um, let me share this one. So essentially, what are the 12 most important computer languages? Okay. So we are learning about 12 languages, but for our class, we will essentially just be learning Python the whole year. Just the basics, so don't be too scared. But JavaScript as well is a common language, computer language that's being used. Objective-C, Ruby or Ruby on Rails, C++, SQL, Java, C language, PHP, HTML, C sharp, not C hashtag, right? And Swift. So these are the 12 languages that we will be learning today. Um, so first is, what is Python? Python is an advanced programming language that is interpreted, object-oriented, and built on flexible and robust semantics. Who uses it? It's actually used by Python developers, software engineers, backend developers, Python programmers, and it's used by employers in information technology, engineering, professional services, and design. So if you're using Google or Instagram, YouTube, even launching a ship out into the moon, into outer space, everybody uses Python. So that's sort of like the basic language being used for us human beings to be able to communicate to computers and machines. Which professions use it? Industries use it. Web and internet development, scientific and numeric computing, desktop graphical user interface. Companies as well use it as well. And in terms of how important it is, um, it actually lets you work quickly to integrate systems as a scripting or a glue language. It's also suited for rapid application development, or RAD. Um, and as you know, it's being used by a lot of people, but mainly as well that is relevant to you is games. So Civilization 4, I don't know if you've actually played this, but it's being used to program, how wonderful this world is when you play. So desktop graphical user interfaces, and keeping it clear and keeping it as soothing to the eye and as pleasant for you to be able to play uh, on your desktop. Okay, let me just stop this, share. I want to share again another screen, which is there you go. I want to share this screen. But how do I do that? Let me just share again. There you go. All right. So now I'm sharing several languages now. So what makes Python very important for you to use? It actually integrates systems as scripting language or glue language. It is a language that binds all languages together. It's a computer language that helps you, uh, lets different frameworks be combined so that you can use the efficiencies of different programs into one program. So let's say Civilization 4, that's a game, right? You would have essentially logic that would interpret uh, images, colors, sound, but you would also have AI, artificial intelligence underneath. Or let's say NASA, for instance, they have what we call Python being used for integrated planning system as a standard scripting language, but also you'd you'd want to communicate with people as well, and you would like to communicate within a system or within parts of a system of that rocket ship, for instance, and you're able to actually do that using Python. You get different programming languages to speak together. Where did it start? So Python was developed in the late 1980s at CWI in the Netherlands and first released to the public in 1991. So that is Python. Now let's look at Java. Java is a general purpose, object-oriented, high-level programming language with several features that make it ideal for web-based development. So when you look into things like, you're trying to get in a bank account, you have if you see your mom and dad maybe doing online banking, most of those online portals are uh, accessed through Java. So you put in your password, your username, and it's through Java. Or let's say you are trying to buy something from online, it's usually web-based. You're browsing through your favorite pizza, for instance. You can actually order it online, and it's not very simple as as straightforward as just really clicking it. There's something in the back end that's interpreting your language, your human language, to the system, and that enables them to deliver it to you, back to you, right? So major organizations that use this would be V2Com, Eclipse, eBay, Eurotech, and you know if you'd like to make money out of it, maybe go to have this degree and master Java development, and maybe you could look into Internet of Things, right? So not in the Philippines, but maybe in many parts of the Philippines, in a few maybe, there are advanced houses where I know in the States, when you actually enter a room, um, air conditioning would turn on, or your door could actually communicate with your fridge, or your TV can communicate with your garage door. And those are the things that we can actually try to uh, take advantage of when we know Java development. So it's a high level programming. What makes it important is that it enables you to develop enterprise level video games and mobile applications. What is your favorite mobile application? Maybe you always use TikTok, right? Or you always use this game. And no game can be like Minecraft, or let's say just essentially your notes or your office, right? um, you will really need Java to be able to run. What's great about Java is that it's the core foundation for Androids. And if you're using Samsung as a brand, or uh, some other brands that uses brand that use Java, sorry, that use Android language, then more likely it's using Java. Where did it start? It actually started in 1990 at Sun Microsystems to add capabilities to the C++ language. Java was developed according to the principle of Wara, write once, run anywhere. So it's actually a language that is now owned by Oracle. It was bought by Oracle, but before it was just standalone language that sort of like translates. It's like English, like if I speak English everywhere in the world, people would be able to understand me. So it's like that. Java is like that. It's sort of like a lingua franca, that a language for many, right? For a wider audience that can be spoken using it. Ruby is an open source object-oriented scripting language. So a while ago, we can see that some are programming languages, but this one is a scripting language. What is a scripting language? So a scripting language it can be used independently or as part of the Ruby on Rails web framework. So normally when you use scripts for web frameworks, meaning if you have web-based applications or things that you'd like to access through the web, Ruby is the language that you actually use to get the ball rolling. So let's say I would like to access books from a library, and this sort of library, let's say Manila Library, stored all the books, scanned all of them, and put it in a database that when I click it, it appears to me, right? So that's Ruby. You use Ruby to be able to store tons of data and be able to interpret it as a PDF and read a book through the web. So who earns from it? Well, web app development companies, robotics, networking, system administration, and security. It's also used for simulations and 3D modeling. So let's say, I don't know if you've seen renderings of, let's say, what happens to a world that is that is going to be hit by an asteroid. So there's a simulation. So people sort of like put in the numbers, like how large is the rock the asteroid is going to hit the Earth, and how far is it going to be from, and how fast the trajectory would be. So Ruby is a language that's used to conduct simulations, and for you to be able to use, copy, and modify and distribute, information and modeling and 3D graphics. Not really graphics, but 3D modeling, and manage and track information. You use Ruby. It was designed in 1995. Ruby's creator described it as, it's simple in appearance, but it's very complex inside, just like our human body. So there's a lot of intelligence inside that language. Now, HTML is a standard markup language used to create web pages. It ensures proper formatting of text and images using tags so that internet browsers can display them in ways they were intended to look. So, if there wasn't an HTML language, our websites would look the same across many platforms. So if I say, hey, look at the painting on the left, if there's no HTML language, you would probably see it somewhere else, right? At the bottom or on top or anywhere else but the left. So HTML sort of allows you to standardize the placements of what you want to put on the website. And that's why it says here, HTML is the standard markup language, right? It ensures proper formatting of text and images. What makes it important is that HTML is used to create electronic documents displayed online. It allows you to visit any page and you will see an example of HTML in action. What companies use it? Apple, Career Builder use it. And it's actually very, very easy to learn HTML. It's free and accessible, and multiple versions are available. It started by the physicist Tim Berners-Lee in 1990 to allow scientists to share documents online. And before then, all communication was sent using plain text. And HTML made rich text possible, text formatting, and visual images. So thanks for that. It brought color to our communication because of HTML. Now, JavaScript is a client-side programming language that runs inside a client browser and processes commands from computer rather than server. So if I'm using Java, for instance, my software is using Java, you need a language that would communicate with that language. You need an interpreter to be able to interpret that on your own device, and otherwise it wouldn't run. So let's say SoundCloud, right? Do you listen to music using your phone? And if you don't have JavaScript installed in your phone, not likely would you be able to hear music from it. And that's the importance of JavaScript. So what makes it important is that it's used primarily in web development to manipulate various page elements and make them more dynamic, including scrolling abilities, printing the time and date, and creating a calendar and other tasks not possible through plain HTML. It can also be used to create games and APIs. What are APIs? So APIs are essentially just that's not what it meant. Sorry. I think, let's see what APIs mean. API. What is application programming interface? It's the acronym for application programming interface, which is a software intermediary that allows two applications to talk to each other. So let's say I have a mobile device that I wanted to speak to my car, right? So I would need an API, an application programming interface that would allow my phone to speak to my car, or have my sensors speak to my TV. So let's say, I pass by my TV, then when they see my reflection, when the sensors see my reflection, it turns the TV on. So that's what API does, right? So what companies use it? CyberDuck in Britain uses public APIs. TweetMap uses it. You can actually represent a world map using APIs, jQuery or JavaScript. C language is structured-oriented middle-level programming language, mostly used to develop low-level applications. What's crazy about C language is that it's actually sort of like a very, very basic language integrated into the operating systems of Windows, Unix, Linux. These are embedded software. So without the C language, there wouldn't be computer graphics, image processing, or game programming underneath your computer. Okay, it will just be a box of metal. right, or plastic and glass. So, and that's why Microsoft, Apple, Oracle, Cisco, Raytheon, Raytheon is actually, I think this is a defense company, but they use C language. Most of them use C language to be able to communicate with a rocket ship or with a ballistic missile or just with a plain person, you know. Um, so if you're using Facebook, it's using C language. It's actually very, very simple to learn. There's only 32 keywords to master, and it's the foundational language for beginners. The C language was developed in 1972 by Bell Labs, specifically for implementing the Unix system, and actually gave rise to many advanced programming languages, including C++, Java, C Sharp, JavaScript, and Perl. Now, let's move into C++. Now, C++ is a general purpose object-oriented middle level programming language and is an extension of C language, which makes it possible to code C++ in a C style. In some situations, coding can be done in either format, making C++ an example of a hybrid language. So companies like Google, Firefox, Adobe Software, and Amazon, Lockheed Martin, which is also a defense company, use it. You use it for an embedded firmware. Let's say you want to embed a software within your computer, you use C++. So if you would like a driver, let's say I wanted to print, and my device doesn't have a print button, I can just use C++ language to allow me to actually communicate with a printer and print whatever I have to a device. So the C++ language is used to create computer programs and package software such as games, office applications, graphics, video editors, and operating systems. So I don't know if you've had Blackberries before or if you've seen it. Now the BlackBerry OS is quite different from all the operating systems there are. And BlackBerry was quite popular in the late 2010s. Often the first programming language taught at college level, and its quick processing and compilation mechanism and robust standard. It's an efficient code. It was released in 1983 with providing high-level abstractions to better manage large development projects. So not for your age, but I think soon you'll be able to be handling large projects, and that's the language. Now, C# is a multi-paradigm programming language that features strong typing, imperative, declarative, functional, generic, object-oriented, and component-oriented disciplines. So it's just not typing, but it's also imperative. So you can actually command a device. It can also be declarative, meaning it can be used to state, give you a status. Like, let's say, it can say, the computer is hot. So you can say, what's the status? And it can give you, okay, we have 0.01 megabytes left. So it's declarative. It's also functional, it's generic, it's object oriented. So C# developers are using it, automation test engineers, software engineers. Major companies who use it would be Microsoft, Intel, and Hewlett Packard. And obviously, it's a Windows-based platform. It's similar to Java capabilities. It's ideal for beginners. It's the go-to for working on Microsoft apps. And C# was developed in 2000 as part of Microsoft release of .NET framework. And obviously, it's actually based out of C, C++, and Java languages. Now you've got Objective-C, which is a simple general purpose and object-oriented language. It uses a simple system of message passing borrowed from language Smalltalk. When an object in Object-C is sent a message, it can choose to ignore or forward to another object rather than return a value. So normally when you, and as we try to do programming in the second quarter, we'll be doing Python. it will always give you a returned information. So let's say if I type in my name, it might return in my birthday, right? Depending on how I program it. Or if I type in my name in small letters, it might return into all caps. But Objective C is another program that allows you to forward another object rather than return a value to you. So it sort of like adds as a link. It's being used in Android and in Apple for industries in engineering, management, healthcare, and design. Banks, Facebook use it. Banks and Facebook. It started in 1983, developed at Apple to address deficiencies, especially the lack of object orientation in C language. It was licensed by Next in 1988. Then you've got PHP. Now, PHP is sort of like a web page that works with databases. It is also a general purpose programming language. If your website is getting a lot of information, you have to put in a lot of names. Let's say government websites, right? You collect forms, you collect data, you collect addresses and all these things, and you want them to be placed neatly in a database for future use. You would use PHP, right? PHP is it's embedding code inside your website, which is HTML, and then that website then sort of interprets the language and puts it in a database. So PHP was released in 1995 as a server-side scripting language, which is processed on the server to become a website in plain HTML. So hopefully you're trying to get a grasp of it, and maybe it would be quite difficult at first, and you would probably say, "Huh, what is Teacher Frank saying?" But soon enough, you would be able to actually understand it as soon as you get through to the languages. But this is the first step of you to understand it. Now, SQL is a database query language, not a development language. So you cannot develop a website or you cannot develop an app using SQL. But it allows you to read from our database. And normally, if you don't have an SQL or a structured query language, you cannot read. You cannot read from a database. So let's say I wrote so many articles and I couldn't access it anymore, right? Because let's say at the back end, somebody changed the X to an asterisk, or a letter D was removed. Because SQL, what it does is it actually puts it clearly in a location, so that every time, even from 100 years from now, you are still able to access that information based on the sequence. So it's structured query language. It allows you to ask it, and in a structured way, it puts it in the library so that in the future, you're able to actually retrieve the information back again. Now, what makes it important is that it's this de facto standard database language, always used in conjunction with another programming language. And you're able to manipulate so much data. So big data mining, let's say 6 billion people, right, who logged on Facebook. And I wanted to know what kind of water they like, right? So this is the database that sort of like quickly extrapolates the data, gathers the data, extrapolates it, and then turns it into to sentiment clouds, right? and I would know what kind of water they like or drinks that they like based on that. And this is what's behind it. Okay? So this is, if you really want to earn a lot of money, I think this is what you need to master really if you're really planning to go into computer programming in the future. SQL is the language that you should master. And maybe soon I'll be seeing you working for Oracle or Sybase or Microsoft SQL, right? And I'd be the happiest person seeing you succeed there. SQL was developed at the IBM Research Center in 1974 and originally known as SQL. The first commercial version was introduced in 1979 by Oracle. So it was sold by this company called Oracle. Oh, we're done. Swift is the last language that we're going to discuss. Now, Swift is Apple's newest open source multi-paradigm programming language for iOS and OS X apps. Swift integrates Objective-C's named parameters and object-oriented model, while including an advanced compiler, debugger, and framework infrastructure. Now, Swift is used by people who would like to develop applications for iPhone. So if you're using an iPhone, for instance, and somebody's using something from Android, right? Sometimes those two, most of the time, these two devices cannot communicate, right? So because the other one is using Java, the other one is using Swift. So and that's why you cannot really transfer files quickly from an Android phone to an iOS app because they use different languages. And that's business, obviously, sometimes you want to dominate the world by creating your own language and device using that language so that you corner a market. So that when in the future their kids upgrade, and they become old and their kids upgrade, they will still keep using the brand. Companies like Dow Jones or Apple, Playlist Media, Slack. Slack is actually a collaboration room platform that people use for work. So even if you're really stationed somewhere else, maybe one is working in Manila and the other one's working in New York, Japan, Middle East, you can actually be working in sort of like one singular web space, as if you are working together using Slack. And essentially that's run by Swift. So where did it start? Swift is based on Objective-C programming language. It was introduced at Apple's 2014 Worldwide Developers Conference. The newest version, Swift 2, was released as an open source language in 2015. And that's it. So master that. But I'm really quite curious, and that will be in your quiz. So I'll show you your quiz, right? This is your quiz. Can you see it? I hope you can see it. So this is your quiz. So as I discuss the points, go through it again and answer. Should be pretty straightforward. Anyway, the choices are here. And this would be your exam as well. I'd be getting stuff from here. I think your exam would be just be based out of this one. So you just memorize this, and then you'll be fine. Okay. So your quiz would be essentially your checkup. So this is to sort of like prepare you to understand the subject matter, and then also prepare you to perform well in the exam. So this one would be due on the 13th of September, Monday. I think that's it. So thank you for listening, and keep listening to it until you finally get the gist of it. And then obviously coaching happens between 2 and 4 p.m. daily, Mondays to Fridays only. You can message me anytime, anyway, but I will respond between 2 to 4. And also, if you'd like to set up a time with me for question and answer and you don't understand some concepts, holler anytime. And then, but I will respond to you between 2 and 4 p.m. Mondays to Fridays. Okay, see ya. Bye bye.